The Windtree Press Author Interviews, presented by Jane Killick.
There's a new collection of stories out from Windtree Press called Gifts from the Heart, and I'm delighted to say that the editor, Maggie Lynch, is my guest today. Maggie, welcome.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Well, it's a collection for Valentine's Day, and I believe that was just the brief that you sent out to all the writers. So did they come back with a lot of wide, different interpretations of Valentine's Day?
Actually, they did. And the interesting part is we have a number of romance writers in Windtree Press. And so they're all very used to writing about love anyway. So we got a nice variety of things, and they all incorporated Valentine's Day within the story.
Did you see any themes emerging, or were they all just really different?
There were a couple of themes. I think one of them is that several of the stories had to do with love lost in some way, whether it was someone who had died and the main character was looking for a new love, someone who they pursued in the past but weren't able to make a connection with that comes back into their life. So that was a pretty common theme throughout. I think the other one was more of a new love type of theme, someone who is just coming into the person's life and trying to decide, is this really the right one for me?
Well, romance is such a big genre. So many people read romance. What do you think is the attraction for stories like these?
Well, I think the primary attraction is that all of us want love in our lives, whether it's a permanent partnership in terms of a marriage or just a really good friend who is always there with us. I mean, let's face it, romance is really the big connecting point that most people look for. Someone they can count on, someone that cares for them and knows who they are deep inside and still loves them anyway. So it's only natural that romance is something everyone wants to hear about. And I think it comes in all kinds of genres, although the romance genre itself, says that there needs to be, two people who get together and form a permanent partnership and live happily ever after. In most of major motion pictures and mysteries and science fiction and thrillers and women's fiction, romance plays a role in all of those. Maybe not quite the central role, but in many, many stories it is always there. And that's one of the things I really love about it myself.
And lots of people struggle with it, and you might find romance, but then there might be a difficult path ahead. There's so many stories just within that one idea of two people falling in love or falling out of love or trying to find love.
Absolutely. And, romance kind of provides that really close look at how we develop relationships and all the messiness that involves. Because I know for myself that, when I was younger looking for romance, that I certainly, had this really specific idea of what my husband was going to be like, from what he looked like to his job to what our life together was going to be like. And of course, it was all roses and presents and smiles and lots of great sex. And although those things happen, that's not your everyday life. And I think when people enter into a relationship, they're at that everything's going to be beautiful forever stage. And then as little picadillos start coming out, it gets really messy. And people like to read the stories of how other people worked through that, because it kind of gives them hope that, okay, maybe I'm not alone, and maybe we can still make this work, and maybe I can get the romance back into my life.
Well, that is so true. And now when you're putting the anthology together, you've got to start off with the right story, haven't you, that is going to draw people into the rest of the stories. Was that a difficult task? I mean, in the end, you picked Sarah Rapley's The Telltale Heart.
Yes, it was difficult because this anthology had many really wonderful stories. And I was trying to balance, both a story that I thought was really solid, but also something that wasn't too long. Because I think when people initially open a book, particularly an anthology, they don't want to take the time to read a novelette or a novella length, 7,000, 10,000 words. They really want to get a sense of, in a short period of time, is the writing in here good enough for me to purchase the book or to want to go on and read the rest? And I felt that Sarah's The Telltale Heart really captured a lot of kind of that messiness I talked about in terms of romance, in that, there's two men who love the same women. Those men were very best friends. Um, things went awry earlier in the relationship in terms of, which person the heroine wanted to be with. And it ended in a very heartfelt way that I just thought, oh, how can anyone read this story and not want to move forward? So I think it was a really great selection, and I've gotten some great feedback on that.
And what about the stories that come after that? It is really mean to ask you for some highlights, but perhaps you could just pick out one or two things?
Well, of course, I loved all of them. Otherwise, I wouldn't have selected them for the anthology.
Yeah.
But naturally, I do have some favorites. I can't help it. One of them is certainly the Colette Cameron's Heart of a Highlander, because it's historical. I have a soft spot in my heart for anything Scottish anyway. But also, she really did a good job of kind of balancing that historical piece and yet the types of things that go on in romantic relationships moving forward. So that certainly I liked. I also really liked The Flaming Heart of Winter by Pamela Cohen, because it was very different. She didn't look at the nice, sweet, kindly type of love. Instead, she looked at the type of love that really is way out of proportion, kind of the crazy woman kind of love. And it's a fantasy type of thing, and just really a bit scary. She's created a whole new world that contains this story. And so because it was so unique and so different, that really spoke to me, and I loved having that in the anthology.
And you end on one of the stories about Metro the little dog. It's a children's story, but to end an anthology with something about Metro the little dog, it puts a smile on your face. So that's a really nice way to finish things, I thought.
Thank you. I happen to really love these Metro stories, and there are so many children that I've met personally who said, oh, I just love these stories, and their parents love the stories because they're just very happy. Nothing horrible happens in the stories, which for many adults, they find that boring. But I think for children, it's just nice and cozy and warm. And I agree. And this one especially took a slightly different turn in that it's really more of a fable than some of the other Metro stories, which seem to be somewhat based in reality with quite a bit of literary license. At least most of us don't believe that our dogs talk directly to us, but in the story here they do. I also, because this is the only children's story in the book, I needed to find a place that was designated for it. So it either had to be at the beginning or the end. And I just felt, as you said, that at the end was the best place because it does leave a smile on your face. And it's easy for children who love the stories to just go to that and not have to look for a long time to find the one story that's written for them.
Gifts from the Heart was inspired by Valentine's Day, as we said, but I suppose you could read it any time of year.
Absolutely, because again, it's all romance stories. And as we know, romance is the number one fiction genre. Literally millions of romance books are sold every year. And so I think anyone who just enjoys love and relationships and all that entails would enjoy this book, whether it's Valentine's Day or not.
Well, the important question is, how can people find out more?
Well, they can go to our site, which is windtreepress.com. That's windtreepress.com. And you will see it featured right there on the front page because it is a new release. Down the road, if you happen to be listening to this later, let's say summer, when it's not on the first page, you can certainly go to the Our Books and select anthologies And go ahead and you will see it there among other anthologies that our authors have participated in.
Well, I'm really looking forward to reading some of those stories. So, Maggie Lynch, thank you very much for joining us today.
And thank you, Jane. I really had a ball.
This has been a Windtree Press podcast. For more information, visit windtreepress.com.